Ernest Gilbert here for VI Consortium in Frederiksted, and today we're interviewing as part of an exclusive interview with the delegate to Congress, now her running mate. They're vying to become the next governor and lieutenant governor of the Virgin Islands, Mr. Basil Ottley. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank
Can
you.
we have a handshake now?
Of course.
Okay,
of course.
good. It's a beautiful day, a bit overcast,
Yes.
but St. Croix, it is beautiful. At the same time, we are hurting.
Yes.
Just spoke to the delegate, a lot of ideas for St. Croix. Of course, you are from St. Thomas. We've seen St. Thomas be the beneficiary of many great ideas, businesses. Everything seems to be going to St. Thomas. What role would you play in supporting the delegates' mission to see St. Croix grow?
Well, I mean, of course, we're a team. And it's been our perspective that in order to move the Virgin Islands forward, serious investment has to be made into St. Croix's economy. I think we look at St. Croix as being the future of the Virgin Islands because of the great opportunities of space being available and some of its tremendous assets. The deep natural ports that are here, the broadband connectivity, the large amounts of flat arable land. The potential of St. Croix is phenomenal, and we want to make sure that investment is made to raise all the boats in the Virgin Islands. We cannot move forward as a territory until St. Croix is given strong attention and is able, we can now release all of its great potential.
It's very good. Very convincing, by the way.
Yes, sir.
Because we've heard it in the past. We've heard that
This is the real deal.
this is the real deal, right? Okay. Of course, the delegate thinks that you're prepared, to not only be a lieutenant governor, but just in case the unfortunate happens, and God forbid that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. But you would be ready to take the helm. Do you think you'd be ready?
Of course. I mean, I would not have agreed to take on this position. This is serious business. This is not a reality show where people can come to get 5 or 15 minutes of fame. In being in these positions, you are responsible for shaping and cultivating the dreams and expectations of generations of Virgin Islanders to come. So this is serious business, and that's how I enter it. I didn't just come up to this moment. This is a lifetime of preparation. I've been involved with government. I've gotten formal education. I've seen how the federal government works, been involved with some very sensitive issues, and have seen them develop to fruition. And so I can say without fear of contradiction that I'm prepared to be lieutenant governor and prepared to be governor if unfortunate circumstances were to arise.
How do you see your role as the lieutenant governor?
Well, Donna Christensen is a very special leader. She brought me to the team saying, Basil, this is perhaps the greatest time in the Virgin Islands development where we cannot just have one person. We need all hands on deck. And she's a special leader in that she said, I want you involved in the decision making because we're a team. Of course, there's statutory responsibilities that I have the skill sets to focus on. But wherever she needs me to be, I am there to support her because we have to work in trust.
You come from a long line of family who've been in government for a very long time.
Yes.
And so your name is very much recognizable in St. Thomas, your father, your entire family.
Yes.
Do you think that your team is strong in St. Thomas?
I think we're strong throughout the Virgin Islands.
Okay.
Because if I had to tell you, I look at myself as being a Virgin Islander. My mother is a Schulterbrat. So my grandfather and his family were actually born right here in Frederiksted. Before, as they got older, they moved over to St. Thomas. But my roots are deep here in St. Croix. I got family in St. John. I'm a Virgin Islander.
Yeah. So I've looked at your plan, the delegates' plan, of course, as it relates to building the economy of the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
We've already identified St. Croix as being the island hurting the most.
Yes.
What are some of the ideas you bring to the table as it relates to St. Croix?
Well, one of the things that I think we need to do on all 3 islands is focusing on redeveloping the historic towns. Because right now, the base of all of our economy is tourism. We have to begin reinvesting in those assets that make us unique and special. And that goes to our old towns. There's no place in the Caribbean more beautiful than Frederickstead, Christiansted, Charlotte Amalie, Cruz Bay, Coral Bay. We have some tremendous assets that we've neglected. And we're saying it's time to put some effort into bringing these places to be a center of activity.
Right. So we look at St. Croix, we look at Frederickstead. We're in the dock here. It's beautiful. Yet still, all the cruise ships are mostly in St. Thomas.
Well, you see, I mean, I think, you know, the cruise ship industry has changed, and St. Thomas is feeling the impact of that right now. The ships are larger. There's duty free on the ships, so folks aren't coming off the boats as they used to. You're getting a different demographic of person traveling. So you're not having the heyday of
the spend is not there as it used to be.
No, and the types of things that they're spending. The world has changed. People shopping over the internet. Global,
of course.
And so the model has changed. And we've always said where the money is in that overnight visitor. You know, and we've kind of lost some ground in that in St. Thomas, and we definitely have not explored this great potential here in St. Croix. When you look at what happens in St. John has about 750 villas, right? When it comes to this season, during Christmas, all of them are gone. That's overnight stays. That's not a cruise ship industry. And that's a powerful thing because that money circulates, is spent. So it means us building up that local infrastructure to capture it. You know, when we think of tourism, we think it's about people coming here and laying on our beaches and everything like that. Tourism is trade. It's our responsibility that when that market gets here, we need to be putting our goods in their hands. When they're in our restaurants, we should be trying to make sure that the eggs they eat are produced from a local farm right here. The bacon they eat is from a grass-fed pig right here in the Virgin Islands. Because, I mean, that is trade.
Yes.
The difference is instead of having to prepare your product and find a middleman to get it out there into the world, you're cutting the middleman out. You're bringing your market here to you.
So that's really amazing. The delegate, I love when two candidates who come to form one team are in sync. They operate as one. You would agree that you two operate as one. You have your differences, I suppose.
But I mean, I think we complement each other in some amazing ways. You know, I ran against the delegate in 2004, and she spanked me pretty good. But you know, we did it in a manner that was respectful. It was issue oriented. It wasn't a personal thing. It was at the time I figured I had something to offer the people of the Virgin Islands. The people selected the better of us, and I lived with that. And we moved on to work with one another when I went to the Department of the Interior as the Virgin Islands desk officer, and we had tremendous opportunities to work with one another and gain tremendous respect. I mean, I really began to see the hard work that Donna Christensen does on our behalf in Washington, but the amazing challenges that she faces, any delegate from any of the territory faces, of being in a place, having to represent small places where the majority of congressmen don't even know exist. You don't have a vote. You don't have a Senate, senators in the Senate to balance what you need. So if you work hard, you get everything you want done, you get the House in support, the Senate sends out something totally different, and you have no advocacy in the Senate. So it's a system that is so level and hard against the territories that I don't think people appreciate the type of work that goes into even getting some of the small gains. And in her run, we've had some tremendous opportunities brought here to the Virgin Islands.
You've seen some controversy yourself as it relates to you being on the ballot with the delegate. Some claim that you should not, because you haven't been in the Virgin Islands for long enough, although you are a Virgin Islander.
When you're desperate, you have to draw at straws.
So you think it's desperation?
Total desperation.
Can you explain?
Well, I mean, people have said, well, you weren't here and all of that type of stuff. But what they keep missing is what establishes your bona fide residence in this situation is where you vote. I think it's Title 3, Chapter 13, Section 201, and I could get the code wrong. But there's a particular section of the VI Code that speaks to people who are employees of the Virgin Islands or employees of the federal government who, because of their employment, they were required to leave. This code says as long as these folks maintain their bona fide residence in the Virgin Islands by not voting in any other place, they are legally accepted as bona fide residents of the Virgin Islands. Terrence Todman, former Ambassador Terrence Todman, I don't know if many people knew this. I learned it at his funeral. With all of his travels and travails throughout the world, never gave up his domicile in the Virgin Islands. He continued to vote in the Virgin Islands. And this particular law was put in place in 1968. Why? The folks of that time looked at Virgin Islanders, young Virgin Islanders, men and women, going off to gain experience that could be useful one day to the Virgin Islands. And they wanted to make sure that if those folks ever chose to come back, that we could embrace them and use and benefit from their talents. Like I said, it was pure desperation. The law has always been on our side.
All right, good, very good. I want to ask you a few questions that I asked the delegate to see where you stand in line. On same-sex marriage.
Yes.
You are now the governor because, again, this is not going to happen. We're just speaking hypothetically.
Yes.
We just signed a same-sex marriage legislation.
Well, I mean, this is the thing that it has become a controversy, and when we've been out there talking about it, you have to watch the movement that's happening nationally. The way this is perceived in national politics, in which way we have to follow, is a constitutional issue. Right? Yesterday, the Supreme Court decided not to hear
5 cases.
5 cases. Why? Because it said the appellate courts, the lower level courts, had already decided that those provisions were unconstitutional.
Right.
The Third Circuit, for which we are administered under, in May of this year, struck down Pennsylvania's ban on same-sex marriage as being unconstitutional. So if the same court of appeals that we're under has already made that decision for Pennsylvania, the handwriting is on the wall.
And so that handwriting, you'd sign it into law. That's what I want to know.
We would have to follow the law of the land,
So
which says that, which is moving in the direction that banning same-sex marriage is unconstitutional.
Right.
So being sworn to protect and uphold the Constitution of the United States, we would have to sign it.
Okay.
But on the other part of that is we must also protect the right of religious organizations to maintain their faith and their practices. So those religious orders that do not want to marry same-sex people within their congregations, we would fight to make sure that their rights are protected.
That's in line with what the delegate said. Your stance on a few things as it relates to marijuana.
Yes.
The decriminalization of it, the medicinal use of it,
Yes.
and the full-blown recreational use of it. Let's start with decriminalization.
Well, I can tell you in the Virgin Islands, I live in Savannah.
Yeah.
And I can tell you marijuana use is not heavily enforced.
Right.
You know, and so I think we are to the level of a certain amount of decriminalization.
Right.
We're just getting to the point where it needs to be formalized.
Right. And put into
Right. And with respect to medicinal marijuana, you know, I've had folks close to me who are cancer survivors who have had to use that to give them some relief. And there are other disorders in which it has been scientifically demonstrated that it does bring some relief to chronic illnesses and diseases. And I think it's only the humanitarian thing to make sure that those folks have every opportunity to get the care that they need. But I must say, though, that we must have the strong regulatory framework to make sure that when people are making purchases, that they're getting what they're purchasing.
Right.
Because there's great ability for people to be getting things that are harmful.
Right.
And if that becomes the law of the land, we will have to make sure that the regulatory structure is in place to make sure that it's kept out of the hands of juveniles and that it is only appropriately used for those who have a legitimate prescription, and that we have, again, the regulatory framework to keep out the black market from trying to use our legal status to get beyond the hands of the law.
Recreational use, meaning the full legalization of it?
Yeah, I think there are states out there right now that are experimenting with it. I would be cautiously approach that. I mean, I can't say right now that I would approve that type of action until we really get a sense of how the other places are dealing with it. Because the issues that we're not talking about, even though it becomes legal for recreational use, there's certain employment standards that will have to be maintained.
And also some federal
and some federal statistics. And then, again, we have to make sure that the juvenile is protected, because I see too many young people from a young age getting pulled into this. And folks argue that, well, if you legalize it, you create the legal structures that happen with alcohol, and that's the way to protection. I don't know if that's enough. I mean, we both live here.
Right.
We see the weak institutions that we have here. And I know from visiting Colorado and talking to some of the councilmen there, they're beginning to see the social impacts of that. And we're going to have to be very staid and very careful. Our society is fragile enough as it is.
All right. I want you to, of course, make your last argument. How do you feel, before we go there, how do you feel about your prospects? You feel like you're going to win this thing?
We will be the next governor and lieutenant governor in 2050.
In 2050. No runoff, nothing?
No doubt about it.
All right. All right. Just as I did with the delegate, I'm going to walk off, and I want you to make your case to the people as to why they should elect you and the delegate as our next governor.
Okay, thank you for that. My name is Basil Ottley, Jr. I am the Lieutenant Governor candidate with the Christensen Ottley team, seeking your vote and your support in November 4th. We are the team that can bring the type of changes that are required because we have the experience, we have the relationships, we have the vision, and we have the passion and love for the people of the Virgin Islands. On day one, because of my experience in the Department of Interior and because of the delegates' long experience in Congress, we can set off on an agenda that changes the way that we've been going. We know, we feel the pain of the people of the Virgin Islands with regard to energy, with regard to healthcare, with regard to crime, with regard to education. This is an opportunity, as I'm standing here in the historic town of Frederiksted, for us to grab hold of all of our tremendous assets, for us to look forward to the future with great hope and opportunity. This is the time when all of us who love the Virgin Islands must stand together and take advantage of all of the rich assets that the United States brings to us. We can do this. Under the leadership of Donna Christensen, we will realize a new day of prosperity where everyone, no matter where they're born, where they come from, how they look, how they speak, will have a fair chance to fulfill all of their dreams and expectations. Remember, on November 4th, vote number 5, the team that can deliver real solutions and a new day of hope and prosperity.